Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I'm a licensed nutritionist, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens, strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, owner of Strength Guild. I'm a traveler again. I just got back from California late last night. So
nice. On the road.
Yep.
This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet Certification and the Physiologic Flexibility Certification, and associate professor at the Carrick Institute, and teaching again for Rocky Mountain University in fall.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We have we're gonna do a sleep and nap episode. So if you have some tips on napping and sleeping, that's going to happen after the break. Right now we have some mail and news. This first was from the forums. This is actually a former student. So he says, hi, my name is Sean. I was a student of yours back in the Akron days, about 2009. I remember when you ruptured your triceps tendon doing skull crushers. I couldn't help but think of you because I just ruptured my left triceps tendon. Playing rugby at 45 years of age. I'm retired now. I had a history of tendonitis of the elbow that I never really addressed other than altered movements, exercise choice, and some compression. Man, I feel you, Sean, already here. What was your experience bouncing back from the injury? What helped? I'm obviously going to follow orders from the doctor, but the same mania that had me out there on the rugby pitch at my age is the same mania that has me turning over every rock to maximize recovery to get back to as close as my previous capacity as possible. I stress out that the docs, etc., are going to be super conservative, thinking I am a typical patient that is sedentary, overly pain, averse, that sort of thing. I know that doing nothing, unfortunately, has to be much of what goes into this initial recovery phase, but I'm kind of freaking out, man. P.S. I subscribe to the podcast, love listening to you all, Sean. So, Sean, here's what I said, and then we're going to ask Phil, because I think Phil's torn at least as many things as I have. We're going to go to the gnarled old oak tree. I dropped the Percocet after about 4 days. I was getting itchy and tingly. I didn't like the idea of just being doped up. So as soon as I got out of the immediate, the wound, the surgical wound is not going to bleed down my arm phase, I tried to get away from the pain meds. I took low-dose 250 milligram vitamin C just to try to make sure I had the recovery. I guess basically I just ate a lot, right? Calories, protein. I think a lot of people make a mistake that I'm not doing anything, so I'm not going to eat. No, I wanted to be in a positive, nitrogen balance, protein synthetic state. So I made myself eat quite a lot. I think nowadays I might take a collagen supplement as well. Like I get one from the Now brand. I did not do lying triceps extensions for several months because that's what did it to me, and I was just sort of PTSD. I did do light to moderate weight, like push downs, sort of what I call cross bench dips. I don't know what the official name is for those, but, feet on one bench, hands behind your butt on another, just dips like that. Things that didn't bother me or seem to really, put the olecranon right in the ultimate stress path. But Phil, I know you're super aggressive with this stuff. You do more than that. I mean, I got back to lifting fairly quickly, but not like training weights, but sometimes like with your biceps, you were even freaking me out, man. So what's your take on this whole thing, recovery from the blowout?
Yeah, and just I'm pretty sure I've probably blown more things than you. So I've done both biceps and a hamstring off the bone, as far as tendons go.
Mm-hmm.
My big thing, the number one thing for me is, like you said, I dropped the pain pills almost immediately, as soon as I could.
Interesting.
Even with my hip, like it was next day. Like I just didn't take them.
Yeah.
And I think pain is something you need in this recovery process. If you're hiding the pain, you have the potential to do stupid things you shouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
If you're out of pain. So that pain is not a bad thing. It's your warning sign to, don't do that. It hurts. So, and that's what you want to do. Number one thing is gain back mobility in any of these tendon blows. So that was number one goal every time. Like with both my biceps. Yeah. I did not train my biceps at all until I could lock out my arm fully. And then at that point, I slowly pushed into it. I have orthopedics that know me, and they knew, like, they didn't assign me PT per se. They just gave me things like you can't do this. And they'd tell me, okay, this week you can move up to 5 pounds and things like that. Number one thing, like my first bicep, it was my right arm. So I did things like I attached a little rubber band to the inside of my car. And anytime I was driving, I just let that thing pull on my arm and I'd pull back. Things like that. And just lots and lots and lots of reps for a while. Train the other side hard. I always trained the opposite arm as much as I could. And, I just concentrated on the rest of my body. It was like, okay, I can't do this, so it's time to concentrate on these weaknesses. Like I squatted a ton with my biceps. I bought a safety squat bar. That's the first reason I bought a safety squat bar. I ended up loving it after that. And, but I could squat with no arms or one arm with the safety squat bar and do good mornings and things like that. Of course, deadlifting was out because I only had one arm. I mean, there was a video of me on my second bicep. I was just being an asshole, and I deadlifted. Some coach around here did a deadlift PR, so I did it one armed.
You jerk, man.
So, but the whole point of that is just, take this time to don't concentrate on the injury, concentrate on what you can work on. The injury is going to come back. Just be patient with it, and you'll kind of know. And like I said, with the pain pill thing, listen to your body. If it hurts, if it's a 2, stop. A 2's not even good on an injury. So it's your body telling you you're doing something that you probably shouldn't yet. So, and I did the same thing with my hip and everything. I always we're looking to regain pain-free range of motion. And once you have that, okay, that's your cue. You can start pushing up training. Right, yeah. And I would concentrate on volume before I concentrate on load and things like that. And
totally
a big emphasis on full range of mobility. The thing you're going to have to worry about with, I don't know so much. Like I had to worry about it a lot with bicep, but my supination, pronation, gaining it back. I don't think so much with the tricep, but it's just full extension of that arm. Same thing with the bicep, and more so with the tricep, just being able to bend it all the way.
Exactly,
again.
just the opposite
You're
way.
You're gonna have to slowly bend that arm and push to tightness, and then let off. Push to tightness, let off. And just slowly gain that back. So, and then after that, it's the mental side of it. You're gonna have to just, for a long time there, I just worried about the biceps.
Oh yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna that's gonna take time, and eventually, with lots of reps and lots of practice, you won't think about it anymore. Once you're there, okay, now you can really train again. So, and that's what took me. It took me 2 years with my hamstring and my hip. It was a couple years before. Okay, I can push this now without thinking about it.
Good. That makes me feel better because I think it was a year before I dared try any lying triceps extensions. Like skull crushers. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was doing every other triceps movement imaginable. But yeah, eventually I think you come around to that. That's a good call about the range of motion. In fact, Sean asked about resuming full capacity. The ER doc, which by the way sent me home with ibuprofen, and I'm like, you're adult. Luckily I knew some sports med physicians, but He's like, well, if it is tore, it'll just scar down, and you'll have like 85% ability. And not realizing I was aghast at that, right? Like, I am not some little old man yet, old man or old lady, like, okay with everything tore off and just scarred down. No, reattach that. Are you kidding me? But also, it's funny, Phil, you say about the relationship with your doc. I think that's a big deal too, because like you, I was given the respect. Like he's like, Lonnie, you have a PhD in this stuff. Like, you handle your PT. I don't want some PT just cranking on you and messing with my work. That's actually what he said. So if that offends some of our PT listeners, maybe it should. I don't know. Maybe you've heard that from orthopedic surgeons before. But I'm like, hey, I get it. And I did work with a PT, Dan, but I was a pretty active part of all that. I think you kind of have to be.
Yes.
But, yeah, in any case, get your range of motion back, be patient. You will know. That's funny that you said that, Phil, because I also felt that way. I've torn two things, my right elbow, triceps, and then I tore the bejesus out of my right ankle. I can't even – it's not just one thing. I tore all of it. It's probably like when you got run over, Phil. Like, what did you tear? All of it,
Yeah, everything.
The whole area. And in both cases, I went through similar things. I tried to get away from the pain meds as fast as I could. I did have some patience. Did you eat a lot, Phil, or do you just eat normally?
No, I agree with that. Like any injury, what I tell people, because a lot of people, they get injured and they're like, okay, well, I'll just go on a diet. That's not the thing.
No.
That's the opposite. So I've seen a lot of people go dieting. If anything, use this time to gain a few pounds. Your body's trying to heal. You need the energy. If you want to come back fast, don't diet. So, and that's why I just didn't worry about my weight on any of those big injuries, and just went for it. No, like you said, I even know, I know PTs. Like one of the kids that I've trained since high school and is now out and a PT, and his big thing now, PT has become a lot more aggressive than it used to be. And his big thing is most people just don't want to do it. It's just putting in the work. You need to work on this thing every day if you want to bounce back, numerous times a day. Yeah. Just mobility work and, things like that. And that tendon strength, it's just low rep, high weight, man. Just get comfortable with that. And that's going to help, even if it's 5 pounds, just over and over and over and over again. And it's a weights that aren't going to mess up that tendon. They're pretty strong. They anchor those things in pretty drastically. Like my doctor with my bicep was like, this thing ain't coming. It's going to be something else that blows before this anchor does.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you can still feel my staples right on my olecranon there. He's like, I guess we could take him out, Lonnie, if you wanted to. I'm like, why? But why? I'm like, no, just leave him in. It makes me feel like it's stronger. It is weird to feel like I can't lean on my elbow because I feel like there's staples poking through my skin. Yeah. But that's weird. Surgery, I will say this too, and Phil, I bet you think this, and Mike, insofar as you've dealt with this kind of stuff, is surgery leaves you changed. I always shoot for listen, I feel, I don't mean capacity, but just like overall score, like grade. If you could get back to 95% of perfect, you can then outgrow it. You can actually go on and compete and do other things, absolutely. But you're going to be 5% weird. Like I'm talking about, like with the staples, I can still feel, and there's going to be a lingering weirdness. Surgery leaves you permanently changed, and I think that's why you eat and you do the range of motion, and because you got like one shot, in my opinion, you've got this window where you want to repair it correctly. Just comply, man.
No, I agree, but I think you can be aggressive. Just be aggressive, but not stupid. Like if it hurts, stop. And go up slow. Like any of your warm-ups and things for a long time, go up slow so you have time to feel that, okay, it hit a 1. You take a 100-pound jump and, oh, no, I went from a 0 to a 7. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
Not good.
But I mean, and like the mental side, like you said, it took you a year. Like I quit strongman because I just can't do stones anymore. I blew my first bicep on stones, and all I thought about it, I came back and did a competition after that had stones. And all I thought about while I was doing the stones was blowing my bicep. I was like, I'm done. I can't do it. You can't be strong. You have to be mindless to be strong and efficient. And I couldn't do it. All I thought about was, oh, shit, I hope it doesn't blow. And I'm trying to feel my bicep the whole time I'm lifting this huge stone onto a table. And that's when I quit. I was just like, I'm done. I know I'm done. So,
Mike, what about you? Personal experience and or, I don't know, tendon turnover, just anything that you're thinking about here? Because I know your mind's always cranking here.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of stuff in the past. Luckily, I haven't had too much stuff lately. I've completely dislocated my right arm playing broom ball, separated my left arm mountain biking, pulled both my hip flexors and groin. Um, yeah, I completely spiraled my right ankle snowboarding, 2005. So, yeah, I mean, I think with Phil, like, I think of aggressive, I think of frequency and pain-free range of motion. Like when I did my ankle, I remember lying, doing contrast therapy in the bathtub with my ankle, which is the size of a cantaloupe, trying to move my big toe up and down about a half inch. That's all I could do.
Right. But it's a start.
But it's a start, right? So just whatever you can, pain-free range of motion. Um, yeah, I didn't use any pain meds as soon as I possibly couldn't because I wanted the feedback. And then there's some interesting stuff we've talked about from Keith Barr and Dr. Shaw on the collagen loading. So I've done this with a few athletes as they're recovering. You can take 15 grams of collagen 40 to 60 minutes before exercise, small amount of vitamin C possibly. I think they used like 60 milligrams, so not much. And then whatever you do after that, so once you hit that, let's say 60-minute mark, you would do your rehab type work. And then that process seems to stay active for 10 to 15 minutes. So do whatever you think is the most impactful thing first. And then that process appears to reset within about 6 hours. So I would have people do that in the morning, do some of their physical therapy in the morning or their light exercise or whatever they're doing, and then do it again before training in the afternoon just to get another effect. There's some very interesting animal data they've done on engineered tissue and ligaments. They do appear stronger. There's some molecular stuff that seems to be upregulated in humans. Again, no one's going to probably volunteer part of their, ACL or something like that for a human biopsy. So we are still missing some data on that. But it's not much of a downside, and it appears to help. And like you guys said, too, working the opposite side, I think, is super beneficial. There's some cross-education effects. And then also trying to work on just general movement patterns to keep them moving as close to a human as possible. Right. So on my ankle, the big thing was still working, if I could, on hip extension and flexion because I'm walking around using my adductor more than anything else because I can't flex my ankle. That was once I could have a boot. So just working on those other couple things so that as it's healing, all your movement patterns are coming back together much faster than normal.
Yeah, neurologically. I was so focused on tissue level stuff. Like I want all of that tendon, I want all of that binding and cross-linking in nice orderly fashion. And but you're right, the neural stuff is a big deal. It kind of goes hand in hand.
The last part too for him, if possible, I have people pick what is your end goal that says you are healed. Right, so if you hurt your back on a 400-pound deadlift for a single rep, and you do a 400-pound deadlift again without any pain, right? Or in my case was, can I snowboard again and do a hard carve and not think about my ankle again? If you can get all that function back, then I think having that endpoint kind of lets your brain forget about it. And if you can't, it's kind of like what Phil said, then you got to decide if this is really going to be worth your time to do ever again or not.
Yep. And it's okay to not.
And it's okay to not, right? But I think making that an actual active decision and thinking about that ahead of time is key.
Yeah. And my big thing on both like biceps, because they're directly tied to that activity, was because a lot of people blow their biceps deadlifting and they do it wrong. And I've never hurt a bicep deadlifting. But my big thing was, okay, I'm going to get back and I'm going to deadlift what I did before. For me, it was 700. Yeah. And within like 6 months of both biceps, I was back on the platform in a meet and I did it.
Yep.
And that was my concentration. A lot of that, of course, was just range of motion. Like I had to be able to lock out my arm comfortably and just like it needed to be relaxed, locked out.
Mm-hmm.
So that tightness had to be gone or I was in trouble. So that's what I concentrated on.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I have one little piece of news, and then we'll go to break. This is just brief. This is from the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research from March, so it's pretty new. Snar and colleagues.
Strength and muscle sport news.
I think we heard about this down in Florida last weekend, Mike, but validity of wearable electromyographical compression shorts to predict lactate threshold. So essentially shorts with little sensors in them, right? Look at muscular electrical activity, EMG. It says determination of lactate threshold is an important variable in improving cardiovascular endurance and performance. Recently, EMG has been deemed as a potential method of monitoring exercise intensity and may provide a non-invasive technique to also monitor lactate, right? So it's not sampling lactate, but we know lactate comes from intensely contracting muscle. So there you have it. It says 13 subjects, 9 men and 4 women, completed a maximal exercise test on a cycle ergometer. Blood lactate was measured every minute, and EMG was recorded throughout at the vastus lateralis. Results demonstrated no significant differences between lactate and EMG thresholds in regards to work output, percent max heart rate, or percent peak oxygen consumption. This confirms that both lactate and EMG exhibit similar properties during an incremental exercise test. So wearable EMG compression gear may prove a viable tool, right, for non-invasive monitoring of exercise intensity. So, Mike, I thought what you might do is explain to everybody, and of course some of our listeners know, but what's neat about lactate threshold training, maybe, and then what's your thought on the technology here?
Yeah, so lactate threshold training has classically been used to try to determine what is, for endurance athletes, kind of the maximum pace you can hold, right? So if your VO2 max, your volume of oxygen you can run through the system, is kind of, let's say, the top end marker, and we're talking about an endurance activity, some people can use a very high percentage of that VO2. Other people can't really sustain a high percentage of it very long, right? And what you want to look at is, if for a race, it's whoever can sustain the fastest pace for the longest time is going to be the winner. So they try to use lactate for that, because lactate, you kind of heard lactic acid, which dissociates lactate and then hydrogen ions. All right, so for lifters, if you ever get on and do a leg extension and you keep doing reps, you get the burning sensation you feel. That's actually hydrogen ions that are literally being dumped into the muscle. Lactate is actually getting reused as a particular fuel, which is all George Brooks' stuff.
Yeah.
But we can't really measure hydrogen ions all that well. We can't measure this accumulation of this kind of sort of signaling waste product. But we can measure lactate. So lactate was used as a proxy to determine, oops, now I'm probably doing a little bit too much work, and I'm getting more of these byproducts, and my speed is going to have to slow down. But if I can stay kind of below right where this kind of lactate inflection point is on the curve, I can get a faster pace, and I can go for a long period of time. So it sounds like in the study they're trying to use EMG, right? So looking at activation signals to the muscles as a surrogate for lactate, which, I don't know, it seems like a weird study to me. If I had EMG in my shorts, I'd be looking at all sorts of other stuff besides lactate, and if it's similar to that. You can use NIRS to look at lactate, which is probably more accurate. So NIRS is the like a MOXIE sensor. So it's a little light that shines into the muscle, and it reflects off of your hemoglobin to tell you if it's loaded with oxygen or not. Again, that has a bunch of pros and cons, but at least you're looking more at direct oxygen levels in the muscle as opposed to electrical kind of surrogate. But I'd have to read the study on it, and either way, it'd be interesting if you had electrical signals in your shorts. I know the Athos company has tried to do it for a while, but I'd be more interested in what is the actual output, what does the left versus the right look like, what are your ratios between quad and hamstring and all that kind of stuff.
Right. There's other cool stuff. I agree.
Yeah.
Like if you've got EMG sensors in your britches, in your Under Armour, whatever. One of the speakers last weekend down in Florida did mention that they're still very stiff. Like they're not very pliable, and it felt like putting on tidy whiteys, that were 2 sizes too small, or boxer briefs that were too small, and they're very stiff, and that would be really distracting, I would think. But the way I always look at lactate threshold training was, a lot of people, especially if you're interested in your aerobic base, they're looking at the point at which how can you bang on all cylinders without cheating and going anaerobic, if you will, right? Because from an aerobic perspective, yeah, you could crank out extra power output, but if you're dumping lots of lactate, and hydrogen ions that are associated with that, that's kind of what they're hoping for. Is how far can we push an athlete? And then once they know, they can even use your heart rate as a proxy, and here they're using EMG as a proxy. But it's interesting, how far can we push you before you have to start using, fast glycolysis and other systems, in a sense, overwhelming your mitochondria, at least, by indirect indicator. And this could be one way to do it. I guess it makes sense to me. If you have a lot of intense electrical activity in the muscle, that's probably going to, at the same time, you're going to have these metabolic processes going on. But I agree. I think there's a lot of other things I'd be gravitating to with EMG. And it depends how sensitive it is and the noise and all that kind of stuff. I've tried to look at EMG after caffeine consumption in the past, and I am just not an electrophysiologist because, damn, that is so hard to do. To see more, more electrical activity in the muscle just because you're wired, that kind of stuff. But
yeah, and in principle, you're trying to take an electrical signal and you're trying to figure out what is basically a biochemical signal. Right, because I think it's going to be harder with more advanced athletes because the buffering of the hydrogen ions and the lactate, all that kind of stuff is going to be different. And I'm not entirely sure how that would map to actual just electrical activation, but it'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for the Mail-In News. Let's go to break. Afterwards, we will talk about napping and sleeping. So we'll be back.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go. Okay, listeners, after more than a decade of joining us on the podcast airwaves, you can now also become viewers on YouTube. This is not our usual simple backup of the audio show, but rather a growing body of video taste tests covering various foods of interest to nutrition enthusiasts, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. From within YouTube, simply search for Iron Radio Taste Test or Nutrition Radio Taste Test. In about 15 minutes, we cover taste and texture similar to other products, usefulness to the co-hosts, and whether we would recommend the product to certain clients. You may even want to watch our podcast feed or Facebook group for which products are coming down the pike so you can taste test them with us. Join us for this new monthly project.
Weekly fix of Iron Radio. In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, that's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, folks, we're back. It's Phil and Mike and Lonnie, and we're going to talk about napping and sleeping. And I wanted to start with Phil there at Strength Guild. How common is this? What's the prevalence, you think, of people who are sleep deprived enough, to mess with them in the gym? And then how do you monitor it, or what do you do about it?
I'd say it's close to 100% people don't get enough sleep. I mean, they just don't. It's not priority in our world like it should be. And even worse than that, the quality of sleep, I think, is crap. And people just don't put enough emphasis on it. It's a bigger thing than I think most people care to address. And they don't give it importance over other things in their life. Like, oh, well, I really need to get this done instead. So, like, sleep gets pushed back almost all the time compared to other things in life. So, how do I monitor it? God, that's tough. I mean, it's a lot of times I just have to go off of what they're able to do, their performance. Like, if that starts dropping, it's like you just need to take a break, go home and sleep, But I mean, it's real hard to talk people into, okay, now don't go out tonight. But I'm supposed to go. Say no. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you don't see people do that until they're late. Like me, I have no problem telling people, like, that starts at 8. Yep, not coming. I got to train tomorrow. And I have no problem with that. But I mean, that's a very mature thing. You don't see that usually until people are older. And I did the same thing, so. But I mean, I've done things later in life, like I went and got that bed cooler and things like that. But I mean, I just got that, and I'm freaking almost 45. So you don't notice it as much when you're younger is the problem. You don't even know that it's messing with you, and how much more it could help your performance and recovery if you slept, because you can get away with it, and that starts to wane in your 40s, and then you really have to concentrate on it. Then
that's a good point.
I think if we did concentrate on it more when you're younger, it would have helped drastically. So,
in 2019, there was that sleep talk at ISSN, and one of the things that rings in my head to this day was the lecturer. She said, "You just don't get that deep, satisfying, restorative sleep in your 40s like you did in your 20s." And I thought, huh, crap. Yeah. So I'm trying to stack everything in my favor. My wife's a big fan of double bag tea with chamomile. It doesn't interact with a lot of other things. I'll take an antihistamine to put myself down if I have to. That sort of stuff, a melatonin. I'll do whatever I can to try to compensate for the fact that I'm old enough that I'm just not going to get awesome sleep. It's almost like max heart rate. Things just go down as you age. It's just hard to, you can't ignore it. Just do what you can to work around it. So Phil, I guess when I ask about monitoring, that just kind of comes out in conversation with people then, right? Like,
yeah, I can tell. Like, that's the good thing. Most of my people, I know them well. So I can tell just talking to them when they first come in if it's an off day, or just looking at them, I mean, most of my people, I had them for years. So, I mean, they're like kids to me now.
Oh, I get it.
They're family. So it's like, oh, what's wrong today? You're off. And, or I can tell if they're going to have a good day, just by looking at them, vice versa. So, yeah, and that's just the repertoire, the conversation I have with them, and the familiarity.
Yeah,
so
that's the club approach, the team approach that's missing in big box gyms, or people who just try to go solo. I think is you don't have that kind of feedback, and because honestly, it's always struck me as like if I were to go to work and say I've got the flu, they'd be like, "Go home." I know that's contagious, but if I say I got 2 hours sleep, I'm useless, and functionally I'm just as ill, if you will. Nobody cares. Like, get back to work,
Yep, shut up and get back to work. But, I mean, at the same time, that's your fault.
Often,
90% of the time, most sleep issues are their own fault. They made some other choice and didn't prioritize sleep. Especially in the younger generations.
Yeah, it's funny because we all agree, and we have in the past, that it's one of the most impactful things you can do, and yet it's the first thing that people just toss away, the responsibility. All right, Mike, what does the science have to say about this? And I know that you've used HRV in different ways. You probably have a lot to say about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to dig into it, there's one study I found here. Exercise and sleep systematic review of previous meta-analyses.
Oh.
So if you want kind of a one-stop shopping in terms of exercise and sleep, this is 2017. George A. Kelly, Kelley. You should be able to pull it up on the old PubMed with that. But in short, they took 3 meta-analysis representing over 950 adults were included, did all the fun statistical stuff and numbers and the good things they need for putting them together. And the conclusion, nothing earth-shattering, right? Exercise improves selected sleep outcomes in adults, right? So there's 2 ways to look at this. Does sleep improve exercise, and does exercise improve sleep?
Yeah.
That appears to be a 2-way street. So this one was looking at exercise improved selected sleep outcomes in adults, and then to increase public reach, large, well-designed, and more inclusive meta-analyses are obviously needed. But yeah, there's plenty of data showing that sleep helps. I mean, I think it's kind of funny because I'm almost sort of pausing now because I've had a few clients that have gone the other way, where like 5-8 years ago, all my discussions on sleep were like, hey, you need to get more sleep, and it ends up, like Phil was saying, kind of coming down to being a value judgment of, you went out last night and you should have stayed home to sleep, and then now you're telling me what to do with my life, and it's always a hard conversation. And then now I've almost had conversations with a few people that are the other way of, oh, I didn't sleep last night, do I need to change my training volume today? Do I need to do anything different? It's like, you had all your other sleep has been fine except for one night. Just don't worry about it. Don't even change anything, because you don't want to set up the cycle of, trying to do something different when it's only one night, and then you cause other issues. And then some people who get hyper worried about it, they're like, oh, I looked at my little sleep thing and it says I only got like 10 minutes of deep sleep. Like, wow, the sky is falling. What do I do? Mm-hmm. So you're trying to find this happy medium where, I have a Garmin watch I have an Aura ring that I use. I measure HRV in the morning. So I think there are some technologies that can be useful, but the goal is to make you more anti-fragile, not to run around and think the sky is falling like Chicken Little all of a sudden because your deep sleep, went down 7 minutes from one night to the next night. It's like you're not quite that fragile. At minimum, just look at when you went to bed, when you went up, when you got up. How do you feel in the morning when you wake up? Like I've had to ask, I don't know how many clients in the past, like, before you look at any of your crazy sleep data, how did you feel? I felt pretty good till I looked at the data. Okay, so is the data helping you now or not? Oh.
Yep.
So I think data is useful, but again, how you use it is the key question. Like for me, my deep sleep in general on Aura is not super great, although it's been better lately. So the 2 things for me that seems to have helped the most is a longer time doing meditation in the morning. And then I got one of the weighted cooling blankets. So Phil can talk about his little Uller device, which I have also. I don't have any disclosures with them, but it cools the mattress at night, and you can set it to different temperatures. Yep. My wife has a different temperature than what I have, which is amazing. And then we were in South Padre, Texas. It was quite a bit warmer down there. Our air conditioning was broke for a few days. So I ended up ordering one of the weighted blankets. So it's like a 15-pound blanket. It's super heavy, which I always find is amazing because I love lots of covers, but then I sweat, and so that doesn't work so well. So this runs a cooling liquid through the actual blanket, and that's been super nice. My wife hates it because she feels like it's strangling her to death at night, but I love it.
Yeah, right on. One of the things I think about with sleep, too, is as I've gotten older, and I'd have to pull some references on this. People can go take a look just on PubMed, but although growth hormone has been overblown in many ways in our sports, now don't get me wrong, stacked with androgens and pharmaceutical concentrations, that's not what I'm talking about.
Physiologic levels are different.
Yeah, but, sleep's an important time for that. You read some of the old papers about like 90 minutes into sleep is when you get your GH release. And especially the first study I was ever in, we looked at exercise-induced GH release. And by the time you get older, it becomes a sad blip on the screen compared to when you're young. I mean, obviously, you have to push intensity. I think it's like more intense, at least 10 minutes worth of effort, that kind of thing. But eventually, the exercise part, you can't bank on that being a huge GH, secretagogue kind of thing. And that makes sleep all the more important in my mind, if you're going to get that sort of, circadian just release. But
you also will have changes from one night to the next. So I'll probably do this Instagram post at some point that's like, hey, how to make your aura scores amazing for one night only, and post it to your Instagram account. It's basically don't get a lot of sleep the night before. Do a lot of aerobic training the next day. I find strength training tends to depress sleep a little bit. And just do a lot of movement, get a bunch of sunlight, and then go to bed super early. And so you'll have the effect of all the movement, the sunlight, and the fact that your body is trying to, quote unquote, catch up from the previous night that you got half of your normal sleep, and voila, your REM scores and your deep sleep are a lot higher. Again, that's just your body trying to get back to homeostasis again. It doesn't mean you all of a sudden changed everything and your deep sleep is amazing now. So that's the other confusing factor with just looking at single night's metrics too.
What about napping, Phil? Do you ever try to nap? Does your job not allow it? Are you a fan?
I'm a fan. I don't get to do it.
Okay.
If you have the ability to nap, freaking do it. I don't. And there are times that I do, and I love it. I mean, you can, even if it's half an hour, it can make a huge difference in the way I feel. But, my lifestyle doesn't allow it. I mean, I'm busy, so.
Right.
But if you have that ability, for God's sakes, and especially, let's say you're a professional athlete, do it.
Oh yeah.
The more sleep you can get, the better. If you're a hard training athlete, that video game is not as important as that nap.
No, right on. I was reading an old school book. Reading's a lie. It was an audiobook, but I like nonfiction stuff, and it was about worry and anxiety and that kind of stuff. And this was written decades ago, so there's a lot of data that's come out since then. But the guy's really pushing naps if you can. I think it's one of the things that during the summer, throughout my life, at least the years I've worked in academia, and that's been more often than not. Summers, I can take naps, and it's almost like what, Mike, you were saying, like with data, it can almost be analysis paralysis. So on some level, I'm like, okay, if I sleep more than 20 minutes, it's going to interfere with my sleep tonight. And that might be true. There are some studies suggest there's a sweet spot. If you take like a 90-minute nap in the late afternoon, you might not, sleep quite the same that night. But I've kind of just not worried about that as much. And I just feel better recovered in the summer because I can, my teaching is online. I can, and I'm not going to worry. Normally, if I'm sleeping well during the night, I tend to get up after 20 or 30 minutes anyway, just like close my eyes and kind of doze off. Even that can be pretty restorative, man. But yeah, and not fret like, oh no, I slept for an hour or I slept for 90 minutes. So what?
Yeah. And in our field, like, I would love to see, there's always a push for more stuff. 10-minute walks, 10-minute this, 15 duty yard, blah, blah, blah. How about 10-minute rests? Nobody ever pushes it. It's always more stuff. So you see people stacking on more and more training, more and more mobility work, more and more and more and more. It's like, let's put a little emphasis on resting more.
Pay back.
Like, there's not an emphasis on recovering from all this shit they want you to do. you know?
I love
they
proactive recovery.
Constantly add more stuff on. But it's like, man, how about you just sit down, go outside, and sit down and just close your eyes for a little while.
Meditate.
That can be huge in and of itself. So,
yeah, there's a lot to be said. Meditation doesn't have to be some. In fact, my wife and I have talked about this. Sometimes you work with a patient or a client. They're like, I don't know this, I'm a Christian, and you're like, what? Like, you're like, you can do progressive muscle relaxation. Just go look at some on YouTube for some of that. Squeeze your fist and relax, and squeeze your biceps and relax, and then your pecs, and then this and that. Just work through your whole body. Find someone's voice that you find very relaxing. It takes about 20 minutes, and by the time you're done, if you do it right, you're like a wet noodle, and that's a proactive thing. It doesn't have to be some deep transcendental meditation kind of thing. I'm actually a fan of a lot of meditation methods, actually, but breathing, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I think within 20 minutes, you can actually get a lot accomplished as far as paying back. It's a good point, Phil. Every time somebody has a little bit extra resource, they spend it instead of putting back. We run our bodies like a bad businessman. We're driving ourselves into bankruptcy instead of proactively putting stuff back, like with meditation and naps.
Another big one I do to help, and I started this probably a year and a half ago, is like you talked about audiobooks. I'm a big fan of audiobooks, but I will turn those on to go to bed, and it's always a book I've already listened to. It's a book I already know, so I'm not paying attention to it. I know what's coming up next, and it allows my head to shut off and just get lost in the voice and go to bed. So it's relaxing. But
all right, final thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I just had in the meditation comment, I did the physiologic flexibility certification, and I don't know, maybe I'll give it away, but at the end I have oxygen and CO2 regulation. So a lot of it is breathing exercises. And so I kind of purposely went out of my way to say breathing exercises and not use the word meditation, even though a lot of them are basically straight up old school style meditation techniques, because I didn't want people being turned off by the term, because it's one of those terms that I think has been sort of bastardized every which way now, and everyone has potentially a negative connotation to it. And I'm pretty sure Jesus still wants you to breathe. I'm a Christian, so it's okay to do meditation and breathing exercises, but I kind of opted out of that whole thing and just called them all breathing exercises, because I want people to do it. And like Phil was saying, I found for myself that it's super beneficial. And most of the time I just sit outside in the morning, pick a point to look at, and just sit there and not move for a while. Let the thoughts come in and just let them go. And that's more of actually a Zen style meditation. But there's tons of different things you could do. Like you were saying, Lonnie, progressive relaxation, there's guided stuff, there's breathing techniques, there's many different things. And I think it's very beneficial, but like you guys were saying, people are having to now recovery from the recovery techniques. It's like maybe you just need less inputs. I think that's where I would start. Like do that for a while and get calm with less inputs, which is something I know I always have to work on, and go from there.
Yeah. There's a lot of free resources on YouTube. It's really just finding something that you relax with. White noise, brown noise, pink noise, ASMR stuff. Sometimes it's people talking quietly, or it could be any kind of sound or voice that relaxes you. Last year, I bought a cloth headband, and I look ridiculous in it, but nobody sees me, right? And it's got speakers. Yeah, it's got little speakers. So, because if I wear earbuds, they'll fall out. But I could put on white noise or anything else, and I can absolutely zonk out almost anywhere, And those are on, I think they're like $20 on Amazon. And those have been handy for me. You plug them in like USB. There's a little box like on the front of it, kind of thing on your forehead. But and that really helps with that kind of stuff, because then I can fall asleep doing that. And, my wife doesn't have to tolerate whatever I'm listening to. But, anyway.
Yeah. And if people have the ability to do like a float tank experience, if they've never done one, I would recommend it. Granted, if you're claustrophobic, that may not be the best thing, but it's about 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in water. The water temp ideally is about the same temp as your skin. It's quiet. It's completely dark. So what you're doing is you're just trying to remove as many other things coming in as possible. So whenever I had the opportunity to do that, I find it's one of those weird things where I look forward to what it's going to feel like after, but I don't look forward to having to sit there for 1 to 2 hours with thoughts in my head, but I think it's very beneficial.
Yeah, anything that can reduce input or calm that internal dialogue. I think everybody's like this, some more than others, but I have a constant internal dialogue that I just want to shut up. And meditation
that's my biggest problem.
Helps.
100% my biggest problem is just my head won't shut up. So
that's why focusing on your breathing and stuff, you really can, if you get good at it, you can shut that down. And it's the default state of a calm mind is sort of pleasant, if you can get there. Anyway.
comment on that too is you can do recreational activities. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I like kiteboarding is because you kind of have to focus on it, but yet it's relaxing. And the second your brain drifts away, something really bad happens. So it kind of forces you to stay a little focused too.
Oh yeah, that's 100% like me. I was with Matt Vincent out in California just now, and he went on a big long motorcycle ride. He hadn't been on a motorcycle in 20 years, and that's one of the few things I can do and get lost. Yeah. Because when you're on a motorcycle, you have to pay attention.
Yep.
Like at all times, but it's relaxing at the same time. It's not like so your mind is just gone, and it's on that. There's no room for me to think about work and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm able to just get lost, and you get in this meditative state where you're just paying attention to the road, because you don't want to die.
Yeah. Yeah, it's restorative, Yeah,
it is.
For me, painting is like that. I'll look up and 4 hours are gone. I'm like, whoa, Anyway. Okay, good stuff. Phil, I know you got to get off to the gym. I got a stack of papers to grade. So that'll be it for this week.
Okay, guys.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.